Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson. Hey, man, we have some really good questions this week. Basketball, football, good stuff. And then there's also going to be a recruiting mailbag coming up in a couple of days as well. So we had so many good questions over the last several days that I split it up into two mailbags for you. So this one's more of like about the team, some construction updates, things of that matter. But let's dive right into it. First one comes from Tech Freak. Just want to say Tech Freak is a great Red Raider. Him and his wife hosted a bunch of us, not just Mighty Joe and myself, but several other Red Raiders at their lovely home up there in Minneapolis for some of the best times ever, right? During the Final Four. Just really great people. Tech Freak's a great Red Raider, and I just wanted to remind everybody if people don't know who he is. But he wants to know about the Womble construction update, which of course is Texas Tech's basketball practice facility. It's state-of-the-art. It's going to be one of the most impressive practice facilities in the entire country. It's like I think last time I heard was 23, 24. It's probably way more than that at this point. $1 million facility. The original target date was for this summer for it to be done. Now I've checked in with a couple of people, and this isn't like the official word, but the word is October, around there, in the fall. But around October is when they hope to actually have it done and be able to open up that facility. So pretty exciting stuff. I've driven by there. I posted some pictures, I don't know, in the last month of some updates, and it is really impressive. There, of course, it's right across the street from the USA. Really, really impressive structure already, even though it's not complete. And I tell you what, in the thread on Inside the Red Raiders, in this thread, I'll post some pictures. I'll go up to campus and post some pictures to give you the latest update of what the Womble looks like. But I can't wait for them to open it up. It's going to be great for the men's basketball program, the women's basketball program, the Lady Raiders, all that. It's going to be really cool, and I can't wait. I hope a lot of Tech fans get go on a tour and see, just what Texas Tech's doing there for their basketball program. And of course, it should really help recruiting as well. All right, Texan44 says, this isn't talked about much, but returning starters. He says Tech is sitting decent at 15 if you count Bowman as one. Actually, I checked with the sports information director at Texas Tech, and by their calculations, and this is always tricky, but they consider Tech to have 14 starters coming back, 6 on offense and 8 on defense. So, 14 is a really high number. Texan44 went on to point out that teams like K-State and Baylor have a big drop. They have under 10 returning starters. And he wants to know how much of an impact I believe that will play, next season. That's a really good question. And look, I'm always talking about you got to develop these kids into grown men. And, the older teams are usually the ones that, are able to have a season like Baylor had. You look at Tech season last year and Baylor's season last year. And Baylor was in a lot of close games as well, and they were able to pull out those wins. Tech was in so many close games, and they lost all of them. All those games that were under one score. And really, in my mind, there's two things in play there. One, and I think this is the most important, is veteran leadership, and then number two is coaching. So the book is still out on Matt Wills. We don't really know. I mean, he's still in the process of overturning the roster, but having that many starters come back is a real. I tell you what, here's the key: is it can be a real boost. But how good are those guys returning? Now, Alan Bowman's considered a returning starter. He's had some really good performances, but then also he's had some not so great performances. I think of Iowa State. I think of Arizona last year. But then you look at Houston, record-breaking performance, what he did against the Cougars as a true freshman, and he had a really good game against Oklahoma State when Tech won in Stillwater 2 years ago. So, I don't know, is he a quality starter coming back? You like to have at least somebody with experience, so I think you feel better having Alan Bowman than not, And you go down the list, Jack Anderson, he's coming off injury. I think, he's considered a returning starter, and rightfully so, but he only played in 3 games last year. So, you got to hope he's healthy. I think you start looking at down the list, and I like some of these guys, but can they remain healthy? Eli Howard, you like him coming back, second team All Big 12 defensive end, but some of the starters you did lose were like major cogs in your team. I think about Jordan Brooks, Broderick Washington, three longtime starters on the offensive line. Though I will say, I like those guys on the offensive line. The guys that graduated and left, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Those guys left on the gridiron for Red Raider fans over their years. But the offensive line was always like one step away. They were good, but not very good. So if they can take another step with some fresh blood, then, hey, maybe even the guys that aren't returning starters can help this offense really take off. So to answer your question, yes, it can help returning a lot of starters. But then again, it's determined on how good those starters actually are. And I think next season, if there actually is going to be a season, is going to be determined more than anything on depth. Because I think there's going to be so many situations where guys are going to be out due to the coronavirus and everything. So your depth's really going to come into play here, and we'll have to see where the Red Raiders stand in relation to other Big 12 schools. But I'd rather have veterans than young guys out there for sure. Speaking of COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, and all that, SM8588 asked a really good question that, quite honestly, I hadn't contemplated before I saw this question, days ago. It's a really good one. He goes, how many bowl games will survive COVID-19? I don't know. A lot of them are not going to. I think what I've noticed with the coronavirus in sports, but just in society, is like I'll say shops, businesses that were on the brink of, going under anyways, they just got a violent shove. I think, out the door from the shutdown, from the coronavirus. And then some things that I think we were considering maybe of a way of living our life, working more from home. I can go down the list. But the coronavirus has kind of opened our eyes in some ways to a different way of living. I don't know if it's better or worse or indifferent, but I think how many bowl games and trimming the fat there. I love football. I love college football. I like watching a lot of it, but some of these bowl games were just ridiculous. So SM8588's question is, how much fat is going to get trimmed, and is there going to be a different requirement? Is it going to be less than 6 games, six wins required to qualify for a bowl game, or more? Well, with a lot of these conferences going to Power 5 conferences going to conference-only seasons, the seasons are going to be shortened, so you're looking at probably 10 games instead of 12. So I don't see how they still do the 6-win requirement unless that many bowl games are just cut. If that's the case, then maybe it will still be 6 games. But I can see where there are some, some of these crazy bowl games that, we can never remember the name of, or that change almost every other year, their sponsorships. I can see some of them getting trimmed and it still being required 6, or if not enough of them get trimmed, and the seasons are shortened, that it being, still win half your games, win 5. So it's a really interesting discussion. I think I'd be lying if I said I knew the answer to that. But I'm interested to see how it all shakes out. That's another one of these things you go further down the rabbit hole with the way everything's being handled, the way things have gone with the coronavirus, that, there's more and more branches of repercussions of all this, and it's pretty crazy. It's hard to get a handle on all of it, but it's interesting. All right, speaking of staying with the theme, Raider Power 81 wants to know, he says he heard a rumor that if there are games in the fall, there will be an age restriction on who can attend. Have I heard anything like that? Well, I've heard that that's been talked about, but I haven't heard if that's been given any serious consideration, at least by Texas Tech. I will give the Red Raiders credit. It's like they want to play a full season. Everybody I've talked with in and around the program, people plugged in, they want to play a full season. The game of Arizona is canceled since the Pac-12 went to conference only. They're still looking to fill that spot on September 19th, and they have some candidates. Now, I think it's my impression that Tech's going to do everything in their power to keep everyone safe, but they're going to have as many people at the game as they're allowed. If it's 50% capacity, they're going to do probably just a little bit more than 50% capacity, not going against the rules, but just they're not going to turn someone away at the gate. It's not going to be at like 32,500. Be like, oh, sorry, you can't come in. 501, that one person. So that's not how it's going to go. It's going to go to season ticket holders, and it's going to go to students, and that's pretty much what there's going to be. seats for. If it's 50%, if it's 25%, I don't know. It's going to be crazy how they have to figure it out. But if it remains at about 50% capacity, which I think we're all, that's kind of what we're looking at. If there are actual games, then they're going to social distance. I think more than any kind of age restriction, I think they're going to have to do some kind of waiver. I know, like, I even kind of brought that up to people, and they said, yeah, that might be something they have to do, because once people, like, you can make people social distance, you can do all these things. They've gone to ticketless, tickets, where it's all in your email, it's all in your, basically your phone is your ticket, which was a good idea. And they're, as far as organizing lines and testing people or taking their temperature, I think they can handle all that. But once fans are in the stadium, how you keep people social distancing in terms of, like, not necessarily when they're in their seats. I think they're going to be able to do that. But just people gathering, they see their friends. I don't think they're going to let people sweet hop. That's one thing. And I think, they'll do their best. But I think they're going to have to sign some kind of waiver, like, hey, if you're going to have to consent that if you get sick, it's, Tech's not liable, or the state, or the powers that be. And I think it's going to be interesting. Some people with season tickets, or some students that are expected to sit in a certain area, might have to sit someplace else, because say if a group of 4 has tickets, I think they'll be able to sit next to each other, but then there'll have to be like 2 seats between them and the next group. And so honestly, if you figure that out, not everybody's going to be necessarily where they want to be. So I think people are going to, hopefully, cooler heads will prevail, and they'll be able to figure that out. But as far as the age restriction, I don't believe that's going to happen. But you might have to sign a consent form. So it's what I've heard. That's my best guess on the information I have right now. But I have to say, hey, great questions from y'all this time. I really appreciate it. Like I said, be on the lookout for the recruiting mailbag. And until next time.